A man, Godzilla toys, fifth take. Let's talk.
Dragon Ball, horror, kaiju, and more. Steven's Toy Reviews.
Hey collectors, it's going to be Steven here, and there's been a lot of talk in the community lately about Super7, Toho Ultimates, Godzilla Ultimates. We'll go ahead and talk about them interchangeably, and where the community kind of is in regards to how they feel. Reviews be damned. And what I really wanted to do is take an extra video to just really talk about kind of where we're at. I don't think a review is the proper venue to talk about this subject in particular, so I did want to do this. Like I said right at the top, this is the fifth take that I've done. The first one was like intended to be an ending to the review of this. I did an 18-minute take. I did a half an hour take. Yeah, there's been a lot. So what am I really trying to say here? When it comes to the Toho Ultimates for the Godzilla product, when it comes to Super7 in general, I think there's a lot of stuff to unpack here, and I think that we really need to take a few things into consideration and maybe, in a way, help course correct, at least from my humble opinion, on what to do moving forward. I'm in a lot of different communities. I have a lot of different action figures from many different brands. Am I an expert on the subject in all areas? No, but I mean, kaiju stuff is my bread and butter for my channel. I mean, I've seen a lot, I've talked to a lot of people, I can only offer my opinion. So what I do want to say, and sort of the overall point of some of my other videos, is first and foremost, no disrespect to anyone. That's not where I'm coming from with this, and this isn't an attack in any way, and I don't encourage anyone to go after anyone. As a matter of fact, my grounds are always constructive criticism. That's what I'm always for. Don't tell anyone anything sucks and you don't give a reason why. Tell someone that something is not good or something is bad and give them a reason as to why. For an example, if you say that the paint for this Godzilla's head sculpt is not good, you don't just say that. You say, well, there's a green streak that's here. That's your justification. You actually give something that is constructive. So with that being said, let's go ahead and sort of get into my topics. So the first topic that I do want to talk about is when it comes to Super7 and they introduce a new product line, particularly for Ultimates, they announce a new property, they do begin what is, I like to affectionately call it, a press tour. They like to go around and they like to talk about different things about the Ultimates line that they're introducing or the new line that will be there, the new wave, so on and so forth, and I like that. That is seriously an affectionate name. When the Toho Ultimates line began, they did do that press tour, and yours truly was included in that. Just that. With that being said, it was noted in their press tour, and again, no disrespect to anyone who was involved, I'm not trying to come off that way whatsoever, that there were people, there were influencers in the general action figure community who were reached out to pertaining to, even in the most minimal capacity, how these action figures should be handled. More so specifically what was talked about was how many figures per wave, and I believe pricing as well. As a matter of fact, the waves were originally intended for 4 figures per wave, but then were split into 2. So effectively, for at least waves 1 and 2, for what was the original intention, they were then split up to 1, 2, 3, and 4. So with that being said, to my understanding, when it came to the R&D side in the community, to my knowledge, there was no one in the kaiju community regarding reviewers, influencers, whatever you want to call them, who were asked their opinion regarding how that should move forward, despite the fact that there were those in the community who were in contact with Super7 at the time. So what exactly does that mean? Well, when you do have people who are in the trenches, if you will, pertaining to things like action figures for the kaiju fans, then you know exactly what they want and what they need. And I know for a fact that you do have very, very prominent videos that are out there that people are watching, that people are commenting on, that feedback is given directly to those reviewers. And if Super7 does have the ability to tap into that, I do question as to why exactly that didn't happen. Maybe there's something that did go on behind the scenes and maybe something I'm not privy to, which is gonna definitely be a point as well. I don't know everything. I'm not claiming to know everything, but with that being said, we have kaiju action figures, and as far as I know, kaiju action figure reviewers, they weren't asked despite the fact that larger action figure reviewers were. So, I mean, that's something to take in consideration there. Now, that is going to lend itself to the overall idea for what's going on with Super 7 in general. So with that being said, we do have some choices for other lines, which that is something that I'm a little worried about when it comes to other lines. So we do have, when it comes to TMNT, which is definitely a bread and butter now across many, many companies for quality control. So when it came to, I believe we're at wave 5 and 6 that is currently out on the market, there was varying quality control for looseness and tightness of joints. There were some people who did have very loose joints when it came to things like their Samurai Leo, Leatherhead, even their Krang figure, and I believe when it came to Super Surf and Mikey as well, for hip joints, for arm joints, whether or not they could hold accessories. And for that, we do have that variability. And I even cited with the 89 mold that I had some variability for joint tolerances as well. Now, with that being said, is that it? No. We do have a notion that certain paint apps and techniques were not available for Silverhawks initially, and then we do have vac metal, which is now possible. They did put out the statement that you gotta be careful with them because it may chip, but nevertheless, an initial statement that maybe that's not possible whatsoever, and now that it is, there are some in the community who have made that statement that that's not possible, well, now that it is. We do also have a wave of G.I. Joe Ultimates that did not have an entire paint application to the skin tone that came out with glossy paint, which was noted by Super 7 to have been slipped through the factory. That was not caught when it came to the final product that landed in customers' hands, and that is a bit concerning moving forward for what may happen to overall product. So why am I bringing these points up? When it comes to making sure that these figures land correctly for customers, well, kaiju fans can definitely be vocal, and they can definitely make sure that companies do know how they feel. I think when it comes to Wave 1's release, it's very, very much so easy to say that this figure in particular, the Thirsty for Blood Godzilla, definitely brought the overall perception of what Super 7 was able to do for their Ultimates figures to a lukewarm feel from an Arctic cold initial perception at best. So Wave 1, I think overall, fine, a good initial template for where they can go, but nevertheless, after recent polling informally in some Facebook groups, and very, very mixed reception to say the least. However, it definitely does seem like this is an absolute winner, and that's why I have the Shogun reaction figure here next to it. What I will say moving forward to give my thoughts and to give my opinions here is that I think that there is a lot of untapped potential for Super 7 to really move forward and to really capture the kaiju audience, and I would really like to see that. So I have given my critiques of kind of where Super 7 is at right now, and that is meant to be a critique. I want to see Super 7 succeed, and this is my opportunity, I think, with my platform to really cite where I think Super 7 can improve. So what I think Super 7 should really hone in on, and they are looking to do this with a Shogun Ultimate coming up towards the end of this year, barring any delays, which unfortunately can happen, I think that they should really focus in on some stylized stuff. I know for a fact that Super 7 is trying that, and whatever hiccups with licensing be damned, with the TMNT stuff. I think that when it comes to their TMNT product for the Ultimates, at least the first 4 waves that they've done, admittedly I wasn't too thrilled with the first wave, which I have not reviewed yet, and that will be coming. Those figures were really, really solid, and I personally enjoyed them. And when it comes to some of the other stylized stuff, like the toy wave of Thundercats, those were 2 thumbs up. Those were really great, and I think that truly is where Super 7 shines. So more stuff like this in the Ultimates format, and this leaps and bounds better than what they were able to do when it comes to the Ultimates figures. And what I do want to sort of put up there as well, when this video publishes, as well as when my Wave 1 videos publish, and when pre-orders went up initially for Wave 4, Wave 4 orders are closing today. That's my initial point that I'm making. They released Wave 1, which unfortunately met with Arctic cold reception, I would say. Initial views came out that fans were not happy, especially with some issues, which unfortunately were user error in some aspects. So that'll come back to another point. Let me go ahead and shake my pin jar once again throughout the duration of these videos and come back to that idea. So when it comes to that, Super7, I would say, should make sure that they are catching issues early on and making sure that they are hitting that product, especially when it comes back to that first point that I made, that they are worried about making sure that the customer can afford the product that is going to be out, and they are looking to hit that quality goal. Because unfortunately, kaiju fans know what they want very, very well, and they are not afraid to, if I may say, eat companies alive in the criticism and feedback when it comes to making sure that the product is exactly where it needs to be. And with that being said, I am very happy that kaiju fans can be very vocal and defend what they love. So we'll let that just sink in a little bit. Now, when it comes to making sure that the product does stick with the customers, and what I think I can say moving forward is that for this figure here, for this overall outline, I think that there are some solid ideas and intentions for where it comes with the articulation. However, I'm not saying to copy and paste what other companies have done when it comes to articulation setups and schemes and engineering and tooling and sculpt and so forth. However, the idea, I think I can succinctly say it as this: when it comes to tire manufacturing, all companies that are doing that, they make tires, but they all don't do the exact same thing. They all put their spin on it, and I'm not quite sure why they went back to sort of reinvent the wheel in some areas. So, not to say if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but maybe look at some of those things, see where other companies faltered, and they can just go back and they can kind of fix it as well. To kind of borrow a playbook with the Monsterverse figures that are out, we have some companies that have worked to do the sort of neck joint into the other neck sculpt here, where other companies have done this portion of the head on top of this neck joint and included a hinge instead of just solely using ball joints, and some customers have thought that that really works well. So I understand that these take many, many years in order to develop. It can sometimes take up to 18 months in order to solidify action figures, but nevertheless, I do think that when we take a look at the landscape of the last more than a decade of kaiju action figures, I think that that is something that should be really, really considered. One thing I will cite is Only a Swivel here, when even from the beginning of kaiju action figures from 2011, let's say, hint, hint to what I'm talking about, ball joints have, relatively speaking, been the standard. So why there is a bucking of tradition, if you will, I'm not quite sure there, especially when it comes to the tail, which admittedly is functional. It does work in most regards. In my reviews, I did cite some of the areas which have been improved on over the years, and I do feel like this does work as it did a decade ago, but it does sort of remind me of product that came out back then. So while Super7 does aim with the sort of toyetic, as some of my contemporaries have cited, at the same time, this is not a sort of tribute figure, and this one is, but I'm talking about the sculpt. I'm talking about some of the other figures in the line which may reuse sculpts already, something of note. I'm not quite sure why there hasn't been a setup already in place that is able to move that forward instead of matching things that have already been out for some time. And when you look at how long things can be in development, if Super7 does work on Ultimates, even if we talk about, let's say, 2020 as their official starting point, if you will, just using TMNT as sort of a benchmark, even then, tail articulation for kaiju action figures was pretty solid. And since so far there has not been, aside from the Shogun, tributes, if you will, for previously released kaiju action figures. I'm not quite sure exactly as to the reasoning for that, aside from budget and things that I may not be privy to. But then at the same time, if it comes to sizing and price, Super 7 does deal with 7-inch figures, and they went for very big figures. I get that, but maybe a smaller size would have been beneficial. But maybe that comes down to the license. But then when it comes to that, do you see where I'm talking about pros and cons of what you should do and what you shouldn't do? Again, that's from a reviewer's perspective on what maybe does work or maybe what doesn't work. Now, when we come back and we talk about to what kaiju action figure collectors can or cannot afford, what I will note is that we do have an upcoming mumm-ra figure coming out towards the end of this year for US distribution. That's going to land at $300, and admittedly, there are some who are a little bit hesitant, but if it does come out exactly as it's expected, then that's going to be $300 in one drop for one figure, and no one knew about it until it was announced. And if I kind of look off to my left, that's $120 to $130 turtle figure, and if I look off to my right, that's $120 to $130 space chicken figure. And if we really look at when Wave 1 dropped, we had an $85 Godzilla sculpt, we had an $85 Rose sculpt, and then we had another $85 Thirsty for Blood sculpt. So we had 3 figures drop at once, which from the initial promotional information that they wanted to avoid hitting wallets too hard, then they kind of sort of went against the initial philosophy of that. So when it comes to making sure the market is hit and they're really catering to what kaiju fans want, I totally understand that initial statement that they want to ease into the market and they want to make sure kaiju fans are going to be able to be welcomed into the Super 7 product, but then they immediately hit the 3-figure idea, which some Ultimates waves are doing. So that sort of confuses me a little bit. Now, what I would like to see for Super 7 moving forward is I absolutely want to see them thrive. That is the point that I want to see. So this is my unsolicited video for what I would like to see them really do. This is not me saying Super 7, end yourself as a company and don't do anything moving forward. I want to see them succeed. As a matter of fact, when it came to this figure, which after this review was published for the Thirsty for Blood, it was actually noted, yeah, go ahead and talk about it. Art Adams actually went to the guy who designed this when it came to the paint scheme and so forth and said, will you sign it? That is beyond the seal of approval that anyone who has criticism of Super 7 should say, you know what? They are doing something good here. That goes beyond me. That goes beyond any other reviewer. That goes beyond any other detractor that would say that this figure is not good. That should simply be a seal of approval there that Super 7 can make gold. Out of everything that they've done for a product, I love this. I am going to stand behind this figure, even though there are some drawbacks to it, which I clearly cited in my review. But when it comes to what Super 7 can do overall, I think Wave 1 of their Toho Ultimates was not exactly what they can really do. I think they really need to push what they can do moving forward and really, really hammer home what the customer in the kaiju realm really wants. I think that when it comes to other product that is on the market, when it comes to criticism, when it comes to engineering and setup, and when it comes to accessories, that information is readily available. That information is clearly there, and conversations not had, I am aware that videos in particular are watched and viewed and taken into consideration when it comes to product mapping that have been available since 2021. So with that being said, Super 7, if you do happen to listen to this and you do happen to watch this video, the ultimate consideration here is I really want to see you succeed. This is not a video to shill. This is not a video to get on your good side, because what I will say is based on some things that are changing from what I assume is happening at Super 7, maybe, kind of, sort of, not really. I don't know. Again, I don't know everything. Maybe there are changes to what is or is not happening, and some internal changes with STR and what we are doing here. I don't know what may look like for relationships with companies and so forth, plural, not just there. For what may come in the future for me being able to review Super 7 product. I will say that moving forward, for what I may purchase, I am going to look to see what does ultimately, once again, hit the market, and for what I will spend my money on. I am waiting to see what the outcome for Wave 2 will be. I do not have it on pre-order. I am thinking maybe, but once again, we will see what the final product looks like. I do have hopes for Burning Godzilla, and I am excited to see how that looks. Hint, hint. When it comes to Wave 3, when I saw the not black and white prototypes, I guess the test prototypes at SDCC, I do have my hopes up a bit, but I am more so interested in like the not meltdown Godzilla. What is that, 1200 degree one? Because that's really cool. And once again, that is a concept figure. Well, not really concept. I think you understand what I'm saying. Something that bucks tradition. That Super 7, get on that. Give us more of that. I want to see that. And when it comes to Wave 4, be damned whether or not that gets into production, because when it comes to Ultimates figures, they only go into production if they do hit their order numbers, because the only way you can get into production is if you hit the minimum order quantity. Then guess what? If that does go into production, I don't care whether or not it does that. If I do not see a Trendmasters or Poster Color repaint of Super 7 Godzilla, that is money on the table. I mean, I can't guarantee it or give you advice on that, just to avoid whatever wording comes from that. That is money on the table that I think you need to hit on, because once again, in action figure format, for what we're talking about here, that hasn't been done. And considering there has been a sculpt that has been available on the market, admittedly out of production, since 2012, you will be the first to do that, just like you've been the first to do this, and the first to do this, and the first to make this an action figure. You get the point that I am making. The abstract of this video is Super 7 has not hit the nail on the head as well as they could have for Wave 1 of their Ultimates. For Wave 2, it seems like they may be looking at the feedback better than what some other companies may have for moving forward and making those figures better. I hope that is the case. I would like to have faith in them for doing that, and I want to see that. When it comes to Wave 3 and beyond, the proof will be in the pudding, and we'll have a better idea with Wave 2. Wave 4 orders close today at the time of publishing for my Wave 1 reviews and this video, though you will be able to order at retailers after orders close directly from Super 7. Vote with your wallet. I'm speaking to the customers right now. And I suppose we'll go from there. All right. That's the video. Putting myself out there. Consequences be damned. All right. So with that, thank you to the patrons who make videos like this, which I do believe are a bit risky. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I hope you enjoy content that's coming out for everyone, because now we're transitioning over to the end card. And if you haven't checked out my reviews for the Toho Ultimates Wave 1, I really just want to make it very clear. I'm speaking from the heart here, what I want to see moving forward. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch ya in the next video.